Well, I've got good news for you and I've got bad news for you, and they're both the same. The Toronto Raptors are sev okay, I think I got this right. The Raptors are 17 and 16 in their last 33 games. That's the good news. That's the bad news. And the Toronto Raptors win again against the Washington Wizards. I apologize for delaying this live endlessly, but as you can tell, I don't want to do this live because this game was absolutely bullshit. This is not one of those games where you can walk away and say, look, Scottie Barnes looked like a superstar. This is not one of those games where you could say, look, Jacoby Walter, he flashed 25 points because he didn't play. This is not one of those games where you can say, at least it's another loss for the tank. And this is not one of those games where you can say, the Raptors played a great game and they won a basketball game. No, the Raptors played a pretty abysmal game and they were bailed out late by some extreme heroics by a rookie, by an undrafted rookie named Jamison Battle, who is not under a long-term contract. So, make of that what you will. And the Toronto Raptors win. They win by 8 points against the Washington Wizards. It was close throughout. We can take a look at this game and then we can flush it. 112, 104. For someone who has spent, I want to estimate this at about 65 hours of the last 5 days watching great basketball. We're talking NCAA March Madness on the women's side, NCAA March Madness on the men's side. We're talking tons of games, including the absolute amazing game by the OKC Thunder and the Clippers last night, which was just so competitive. To watch great basketball and then to turn your eyes to games being played by the Sixers, the Wizards, it's really just embarrassing. And I do hope the league steps in and does something about it because these games are getting worse. Okay. Kudos where kudos are due. Jakob Poeltl gets the chain because Jakob Poeltl was dominant. In his 26 minutes, he ate up the Wizards inside, which included Alex Sarr. He had 21 points, 11 rebounds, 3 blocks, and he was a +9. Scottie Barnes did not shoot the basketball well. Some of his, is his three-point shooting coming back? Nope, we're back to 0 for 5 in this game, but he did fill up the box score. 13 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks for Scottie. Emmanuel quickly finishes with 21 points. It didn't feel like it when you were watching this game. Felt like there were a lot of errant, in and outs, a lot of crazy shots, a lot of, dare shots, a lot of, bad decisions. But overall, he did turn it around at some point. He finishes the game with 21 points, gets to the line 8 times. Ochai Agbaji started out this game abysmally, so bad that I was like, oh man, Ochai Agbaji really channeling his inner Aaron Gordon. And then, he finishes late with a few buckets down the stretch. Jamal Shed and I would say Jamison Battle were the story of the game. Jamison Battle was scoreless until the fourth quarter. And then in the 3-minute stretch, so he played 24 minutes, had no points, 3 minutes, puts up 11 points, and breaks this entire game open. Jamal Shed was too good to play down the stretch because Jamal Shed has been a very steadying presence for the Raptors. 14 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds, a stat that they kept bringing up over and over again. I believe it was 400 points, 250 assists. Is that the number? And he joins only Scottie Barnes and Damon Stoudemire as the only Raptor rookies to accomplish that. Holy crap. That is impressive for a second round pick. That is very impressive given the other two guys were both, top 8 picks. But nevertheless, top 8 picks who had starting roles right out of the gate. On the other end, the Wizards, Alex Sarr. Wow. 16 points on 19 shots. He was not very efficient, but he has been turning a corner. He had a big game against Denver, I think a week ago at this point. I got to say, Vegas set the line at plus 1.5. The Raptors were underdogs coming into this game. I looked at this game. I said, this feels wrong. I feel like Vegas is overreacting to how the Raptors got blown out yesterday. I feel like Vegas might be underrating the impact that Jakob Poeltl and Emmanuel Quickley have on the roster when they actually play, because I do think the iteration of this team that plays with RJ, especially coming off of a lengthy absence, versus the iteration of this team that plays with Emmanuel Quickley and Scottie Barnes and Jakob Poeltl, I think the second iteration is much better. So I feel like Vegas massively overreacted, and I feel like I was right, because plus 1.5 road dogs coming into this game. They win the game by 8 points. And that's not completely due to the fact that the Raptors played a good game. I think it's because the Wizards just tanked. Marcus Smart did play. Chris Middleton did play. And these are two guys who've been contributing to a lot of quote unquote winning for the Wizards lately. They've pulled off some surprising wins over the last 20 games since making this trade. But it's worth noting that Marcus Smart only played 12 minutes. And it's worth noting that Chris Middleton only played 22 minutes. And in the 22 minutes that both Chris Middleton and Jordan Poole played, the Washington Wizards were a +8. So really what this game came down to was the Wizards did a better job of resting their starters than the Raptors did, because the Raptors ended up going with 28 minutes for Scottie, 26 minutes for Yak, and 26 minutes for Emmanuel Quickley. And you can make an argument that if you pull Scottie at about 20 minutes, Yak at about 20 minutes, Emmanuel at about 20 minutes, you might end up actually losing this game, but you don't. And this just comes down to who wants it more. I think that's what it comes down to. And when you consider what the Wizards have on the line, the Utah Jazz nipping at their heels, the potential of, losing that worst record tag, I don't think the Wizards are going to mess around with their food, and they're going to do whatever it takes. And don't be surprised if at some point they shut down Chris Middleton and they shut down Marcus Smart for the rest of the season. I'll tell you, if there's any silver lining here, your rookies are probably better than their rookies. I think that's a little disingenuous given how well Alex Sarr has played lately. But I do want to say that, when you watch these NCAA matchups, you see those senior teams and they don't have a single NBA first round pick on them, but they're just burly, experienced, and like they're all 22, 23. And then you have this other team and it's just like ripe with freshmen. You see a team like Rutgers with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, two guys that a lot of Raptor fans think could be saviors for the Raptors next year. That team finished under 500 in conference play. That team finished around 500 overall. That team missed the NCAA tournament, which means that Division I basketball deemed that those two players were not good enough, or at least their team was not good enough to be one of the 64 best teams in the country. What does that tell you? That those two guys are still going to go top 5. It tells you that athleticism and upside are just that. They're not impact on winning. And we're going to have a really good discussion at some point here. Blaming RJ in a tank season versus nobody's bad move. Huh? Who's blaming RJ? No, I'm praying RJ plays every single game for the rest of the season. What are we talking about? All offense, no defense? Love it. Love it. That's how you lose basketball games. Anyways, we're going to have a very, very educated, elevated, and awesome discussion about value relative to paycheck, because I've been hearing that Scottie Barnes is overpaid for way too long, and I got the numbers to mic drop your fucking ass into oblivion, okay, with these, because it's going to blow your mind, okay? So I'll share those with you. We'll do a very brief film session. Like, this is not going to be much of a film session, I'm going to be honest. I was flicking back and forth between this game, which means I got tortured not once, but twice, because I was watching UConn and I was watching FSU versus LSU, and I'm flicking back and forth, but I was recording the Raptors game, which means after the Raptors game, after knowing the result, I, of course, had to go back and watch the entire Raptors game, which means I got tortured not once, but twice. So give this video a like, because this team is honestly hard to watch. Okay. It is worth noting that AJ Lawson back with the team. Jacoby Walter getting a surprise DNP-CD. Don't know why, but cool. Okay. And AJ Lawson did not disappoint. 8 points off the bench in 23 minutes. He had a really good dunk, and he was +6 in his minutes. Overall, in terms of team stats, the Toronto Raptors end up shooting 27.8% from three, 40.6% from the field, and won this game. How? How, you ask? They won the turnover battle by 5. That's probably it, right? They win the offensive rebound battle by 9, 8. They win the offensive rebound battle by 8. That's the entire story of this game. The Raptors took 101 shots. The Wizards took 87 shots. The Raptors took just as many threes and made right around as many threes as the Wizards. The free throw differential was mildly in favor of the Wizards, but they shot 67% from the free throw line. It's a game of inches, guys. It's a game of inches. You get too many offensive rebounds. They get too many turnovers. It's a loss. This is how you lose. And Daryl saying Juju, heartbreak. My heart honestly sunk when she grabbed her knee. I hope it's nothing serious. She is honestly going to be the face of, you know, I hope that she is the face of, women's college hoops next year as Paige moves on to WNBA. I cannot imagine what female basketball in college is going to be like without Juju Watkins next year. So I really, really hope that she's good. Hope that she can come back. Her team is probably right now, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, on the verge of making the Sweet 16 without her, even though she went out in like the first 3 minutes and she was not having a good game. She had already, hurt her non-shooting hand and rolled her ankle in the previous game. So we will see what Juju Watkins does. But you know what? Compensation injuries are a real thing in the NBA, WNBA, college basketball, hoops in general. Compensation injuries are a really big thing. When you play hurt, the odds of you injuring something else go up so much. So I hope that wasn't one of those things for Juju, but she's tough as a warrior. If she can walk, she'll play in the next game. All right. Okay, moving on from this game. I mean, any sort of, wild takeaways from this game. There were some good moments for Scottie Barnes in terms of self-creation. There was that beautiful isolation. We're going to take a look at it. Hang on one second. We'll pull up the film. There are about 6-7 plays in this game, including the incredible block sequence. 2 blocks by Alex Sarr on whatchamacallit, on Orlando Robinson, followed up by a third block from Jordan Poole. That was incredible. Okay. Let's do this. Okay. Also, big shout outs to Tanaya Latson and FSU. They got smoked by LSU. They were really close at halftime. I'm thinking, I was, texting with my friend. I was like, man, it's gonna be close. I hope it's close, but it was not close. The second half was a complete blowout. Okay, pull this on mute for a second here. Orlando Robinson, you got to appreciate the effort. Block 1. You know what's amazing? Alex Sarr actually jumped at the second non-block, still got up in time for the second block. And here comes the third one. Jonathan Mobile makes the pass, and this time Jordan Poole gets up there and he blocks him. It was a block party in DC. 3 blocks, 7 seconds. Unbelievable. Just nuts. Okay. Now, today on the panel, we got into a very extended debate about the basketball IQ of Fred VanVleet. And to those of you who know me, I don't like Fred VanVleet, but you will not believe that I actually stood there and I defended the hell out of Fred VanVleet's basketball IQ, specifically his defensive IQ. Now, this is not a defensive play by Marcus Smart. This is an offensive play by Marcus Smart. And I will tell you that Marcus Smart has been pretty much a negative offensive player his entire career. That did not stop him, however, from betting on himself in this play. He asks for a clear out against Scottie fucking Barnes. A clear out against Scottie Barnes is just disrespectful. In fact, it's not just disrespectful, it's delusional. It's not just delusional, it's insane. And Emmanuel Quickley still helps for some reason. Nevertheless, doesn't matter. It didn't matter if he helped or didn't help. I don't understand why he's helping at all. Scottie Barnes got this. And Marcus Smart, that's what you get. That's what you get. What are you doing with your life? What is wrong with you? You've been in the league long enough. You know you can't take on Scottie Barnes one-on-one. Are you kidding me? That's insane. Okay. Now, I say this is not pretty, but it's effective. I implore you, every time I listen to somebody talk about Cooper Flag, I close my eyes and I'm like, what are they saying right now that does not apply to Scottie Barnes? Might not be a great scorer in the NBA. Check. Positionally versatile. Check. Really ahead of the curve as a playmaker. Check. Great connector. Check. Can guard 1 through 5. Check. Brings great intensity. Check. Great character guy. Check. 6'9". Check. Long arms. Check. Athletic. Check. Like everything people say about Cooper Flag, I'm like, bro, it's like, does Scottie need a new agent? Does he need a new PR department? Does he need is it because Cooper's white? Is it because Cooper's doing it earlier? Like the similarities between these two players are absolutely insane. If you look at Cooper, he's a straight line driver, doesn't have a lot of shift in his game, You're going to see it at the next level. I promise you. Yeah, Cooper's a little bit burstier as an athlete. He's got a little bit more explosiveness, but that's really the difference. That's it. Okay. That's the gap. That's the gap between generational prospect that you would want to throw your entire franchise over versus guy that some Raptor fans swear is overpaid. And trust me, we're going to address that. But here, Scottie Barnes does a very Cooper Flag like thing, you know, bump, 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 little head fake, little bump, too small. Again, it's all disjointed. It's all herky jerky. It's not smooth, but it's effective. It's effective because when you're 6'9" and you're super strong, it doesn't really matter that you're super smooth. Okay. Now, Jamal Shed went to this move a few times, and this is becoming a bit of a go to move for him. Little burst and then that little floater, you know? He just gets that move off. He's such an underrated athlete. Now, here, Marcus Smart, again, defensive IQ, right? He guesses that Scottie's going to turn in. Instead, Scottie feels the pressure, knows Marcus Smart is cheating, and just turns away. Great defensive IQ there, Marcus Smart. Boom, cooked him, right? Great stuff. Now, here, Emmanuel Quickly, with one of his rare finishes that does go in at the rim. They've been working with him a lot at this, challenging a 7-footer at the rim. Not always easy for a vertically challenged guard. Doesn't have like the greatest, vertical explosive leaping, skills. Often ends up stuck in awkward finishes. This felt a little smoother than it usually does, right? Just a little bit smoother. Finishes with the left hand, going left, felt De'Aaron Fox-ish to say that. Okay. No disrespect to Emmanuel Quickly, but this might be one of the most egregious flops I've ever seen. Oh my God. And Bub Carrington was so upset about this. Okay. Bub is standing there. He does not touch him. Emmanuel Quickly feels him, kind of tries to land backwards into him, and then just collapses on his own leg. And the ref calls this an and one. And Bub Carrington cannot believe it. Yo, I don't mind that you try to play basketball the right way, but it's unethical enough as hell that we're tanking. We got to flop too. We got to tank and flop. Are we trying to tempt the basketball gods to just penalize us by dropping us to like the 10th pick or something? Ugh, not good. Not good at all. The call-in link is open if you'd like to call in, but I got some wisdom to drop on you guys, man. I got some great shit to drop on you guys. Okay, so those of you who do not follow us, okay, on Twitter, I'm going to give you a gem, but it's going to be masked as a riddle, okay? Now, I did some calculations today. It was sort of fun, and it's in response to some jackass on X who said Scottie Barnes is overpaid. Canadian water is the best water in the world. Would you agree? It's really good. I don't know what else to tell you. Okay. So I said, so you think Scottie Barnes is overpaid? Scottie Barnes has earned an average annual salary of $8.26 million over the past 4 years. And that includes this year, where he's making $10.13 million. Much to the disappointment of people who think he's already on his max extension. Do some fucking research. Okay. But to date, which does not include the last 12 games of the season, which includes this game, none of these numbers are included in this game that we just played. Scottie Barnes has made $32 million to date. Okay. Here's what he's done with his $32 million. Here's what he's repaid the Raptors for their $32 million investment. 4,600 points, 1,320 assists, 2,000 rebounds, and 19.1 win shares. Let's put that per dollar, shall we? That means he is paid. So Scottie Barnes is paid $6,940 per point scored, $24,242 per assist registered, $16,000 per rebound. You hear Kawhi Leonard in the background, board man gets paid, and $1.67 million per win share, which means for every win that is attributed to Scottie Barnes per the analytics, he has been paid $1.67 million. I want you to think about that. There are players in the league that make $60 million and register maybe 4 to 5 win shares a year. Think about that. 5 win shares for $60 million. I'll guarantee you, I'll bet my life right now that Jaylen Brown, who makes $50 million right now, let me just check. Hold on. I'm going to check. Jaylen Brown, analytics. Hang on. Jaylen Brown. Okay. I'm going to bet that Jaylen Brown doesn't have more career win shares on his entire. Okay. All right. Jaylen Brown has given you 4.5 win shares the entire year. For his 4.5 win shares so far, the Celtics have paid him close to $46 million. That's about $10 million per win share. Scottie's doing his in $1.67 million per win share. That's about roughly 6 times cheaper, which means he's producing at a level per dollar that is 600% better than Jaylen Brown. Okay, so I wanted to put this up against 3 players that are very good players, that are very young players, all players under 23. So you can attribute a lot of this to rookie contracts. I'm not comparing them to Jaylen Brown. I'm not comparing them to Chris Middleton and Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid and guys who are making big money. I'm going to compare him to 3 players that most of NBA Twitter swears are franchise players. And I want you to see what they're doing per dollar relative to Scottie Barnes. And then we're going to play a little guessing game for those of you who don't cheat and don't know already. Who are these 3 players? Player number 1, 9,874 points, $74 per point, $29,313 per assist, $39,963 per rebound, and $6.6 million per win share. Who is this player? Can you guess? Just guess. Player 1 is whoever, and no cheating allowed. If you follow us on X, don't cheat. Okay. If you cheat, don't comment. Player number 2, $8,032 per point, $38,470 per assist, $25,569 per rebound, and $3.24 million per win share. You will notice that these numbers are all worse. Saturday Winter saying RJ Barrett. No, man, I said players that NBA Twitter swears are franchise players. Nobody on NBA Twitter thinks RJ Barrett is a franchise player unless it's you. Victor Chang, you are correct. Player number 1 is Cade Cunningham. Player number 2, as per the numbers, who is player number 2? Carvin Chung saying Paolo Banchero. You are correct. Okay, the next one's going to trick y'all, I think, unless you're cheating. $9,415 per point. $53,307 per assist, $42,217 per rebound, and $3.53 million per win share. Who is that player? Who's that player? Go ahead. Jalen Green. You wish. Jalen Green is nobody's definition of a franchise player. Jalen Green's numbers are not that nice. I guarantee if we do this for Jalen Green averaging like $12 million per win share. Jaden saying Franz Wagner. Nope. Tyler, you are correct. It is Anthony Edwards. So I want to rank out Scottie in every one of these categories against those 4 players. And I want to show you just how illuminating and how underpaid this dude is. Hang on one second. Let me pull this up. Where we at? Here we go. Okay. So let me try to make this a little bit smaller. Okay. So in terms of points, dollars spent per point, Scottie is number 1. Paolo is number 2. Ant is number 3. Cade is number 4. Dollars spent per assist. Scottie is number 1 by a wide margin. Okay. Not only is Scottie clearing all these discussions, he's clearing them by wide margins. This is not a few dollars. He is clearing the the dollars per point argument by over almost $1,100 per point. He is clearing the assists by nearly $5,000 per assist. He's clearing the rebounds by nearly $9,000 per rebound. And Lord help me, if you look at the win shares, he's clearing that argument so wide, it's not even funny. Look at these numbers and tell me the dude is not a max player. I'll make it easy for you. Scottie has been a max player this year. He's been a max player last year. If he gets better, you'll actually have a super max player on a max contract. And oh, by the way, in case he struggles next year, and I don't expect him to, trust me, he has provided you with at least, if you want to consider Cade an above average player, he has provided you with enough cushion that he could do nothing next year and he'd still be underpaid through his first 5 years. Trust me. Okay. Scottie has been a fantastic value for the Toronto Raptors. What is Scottie's ceiling in your opinion? Championship number 1, my friend. Championship number 1. I will never waver from that unless I see something that tells me that he is not. And I've never seen anything in my life that tells me that Scottie Barnes is not going to be a championship number 1. Okay. May not be the best scorer on a championship team, fine. But he will be the most important, most impactful, and best player on a championship team. And can easily be the highest paid player on a championship team. Ah, what a rare treat. We've got Daryl calling in. Daryl, what is up?
Hey, how's it going?
It is going well. How are you, friend?
I'm doing well. I'm enjoying this breakdown of money per stat, and it actually ties into something that I was gonna say
Have you seen
before
anyone
you
else
even
do this?
started. No, I haven't, and I think it's really valuable because it breaks through the, I don't know, the eye test that simple-minded people have, I guess. You know,
And
when
it
people
also
just
greatly
sort of have,
factors in availability, which is the
oh,
greatest
for
ability.
sure. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, it's fine. The world works on perceptions, right? And perceptions are only as valuable as the people making them. And I mean, the world is, how do I say, like, the people with high value perceptions are not the majority, right? They're the minority. There's a big bell curve with the average in the middle. And how can you, like, people that just think that the common conventional thinking about something is the right one, when so logically it's like, no, the average is maybe 50% right, 50% wrong if they're lucky, you know? So it's like half of the people are they have wrong ideas. Anyway, my point, kind of in a roundabout way, is that the reason, or the way to sort of dig through this mess is by looking at the math, looking at the numbers, because that's how you can tell what is just nonsense and what is actually backed up by reality. So people that are talking about Scottie being overpaid, you mentioned the, total points, total rebounds, and whatever in Scottie's career. Well, out of the 5 main box score statistics, right? Points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. Scottie's career numbers are in 267 games played, 4,609 points, 2,000 rebounds, 323 steals, 1,320 assists, and 261 blocks in 267 games. There is only one player who has ever reached those numbers faster than Scottie Barnes, and his middle name is Jeffrey.
That's insane.
One player in history, Michael Jordan, is the only person that has beaten Scottie to those numbers. That's it.
Where did you pick up that stat? That's a crazy stat.
Yeah, I'll tell you, because I was watching the Washington Wizards feed of the game today, and their announcers said it.
Dude,
their announcers were actually really high on Scottie. They're like, Scottie Barnes is the only player in the NBA who can legitimately guard 1 through 5. They said this.
They're not wrong.
Yo, I know.
That is insane. I'm definitely gonna fact check the shit out of that. I'm gonna cross reference that against players that I think could have come close to it. But yeah, it feels right because he is such a box score stuffer. Like and he does it in such interesting ways. Like I was, the other day I was, I posted something on X. I don't know if you follow us on X. I have no idea.
I do,
But
yeah, yeah.
okay, but do you remember I posted like the 20 worst shooting games from Scottie Barnes, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Kawhi Leonard's fourth season, and I asked people to say who's who because people really, really like to live and die by the moment, right? And the truth is that there is a sincere confirmation bias when it comes to Scotty. And it's funny because today on the panel, we are having this discussion about basketball IQ, defensive basketball IQ. And I said something pretty crazy that had the panel up in arms, and people thought I was insane. They thought I might have just said the stupidest thing in panel history, which is that I said I thought Fred VanVleet had a higher defensive basketball IQ than Hakeem Olajuwon. Now, I wasn't being facetious. I just feel like when you think about what Fred VanVleet has had to overcome, he shouldn't exist on an NBA court. There's no one in NBA history that you could say can match his physical profile. Every undersized guard has elite burst, wingspan, big hands. There's something. There's something to all of them. Okay. You want to talk TJ Ford, crazy athlete. You want to talk Chris Paul, crazy athlete. Fred VanVleet's not bursty. Fred VanVleet is not twitchy. Fred VanVleet doesn't have long arms. Fred VanVleet shouldn't exist. But yet, not only does he exist, unlike most 6-foot guards, he actually is one of the 5 to 7 analytically proven best defenders in the league at his position every single year without fail. And he's a max player and an all-star. That must be because of IQ.
It
If it's
has to be.
not
It's
because
not
of
from anything
IQ, what
else.
is it because of? What else
Exactly.
could it be because of? He knows angles. He knows scouting reports. He's insanely smart. He's, of course, smart. And people are like, but you hate Fred VanVleet. How can you love Fred VanVleet? And it's like, how can and that just ties right back to your first point, right? How
Exactly.
silly people are. Now, this is the aforementioned, thing that I talked about, which is who's who, right? Can you tell who is who from this? And I feel like, Raptor fans haven't really had to watch a player like Scottie at any point ever. The only player that can even remotely come close to Scottie is Tracy McGrady in terms of just how raw he was coming out versus what he would eventually become. And we haven't seen the end result of this. We haven't seen Orlando Tracy McGrady. We haven't seen, the full-fledged, 50 or 60 year Scottie Barnes. And so people are kind of comparing him to a different archetype of player, which is specifically Kawhi, who came ready-made, or Vince Carter, who came out of college very NBA ready. Scottie's not those guys. We've never had a Giannis to nurture. We've never had, a player like that. I wonder what Raptor fans would have said about Steph Curry after he struggled with all his ankle injuries in his first few years and, was consistently, out muscled and looked really weak and frail. I wonder how many Raptor fans would have just packed that dude's bags up. Because I'll tell you something funny about Steph Curry, and I don't know if you know this, but do you know that the vast majority of Warrior Nation was Team Monta Ellis?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I remember.
It's insane. But that kind of tells you what the casual person
That's it.
thinks. They see
That's
Monta
it.
Ellis, they see Steph Curry, they say immediate gratification. And if
Mhm.
most people were smarter, then most people would be better off in their own lives. Most people wouldn't be,
Yeah.
financially crippled. Most people wouldn't be in debt. Most people wouldn't be deeply unhappy. Most people wouldn't be deeply unwell. But most people are those things. And yet they still come on the internet with full forged confidence and say, no,
Yep.
I know I'm wrong about everything in my life. I know I've fucked up my life in every way possible. But this Scottie Barnes guy, when I know, this guy's a bum.
It's Dunning-Kruger effect right there. These
Absolutely.
and here's the thing that gets me too is like people that have played basketball or people that, maybe even at a very, very high level, or people that have been around people that have played basketball, think that that qualifies them to talk about basketball or to think about basketball. And that's not true. It's two different things. I mean, playing basketball certainly helps with an understanding of the sport, but there are levels to it. And a person can understand the sport of basketball, somebody who has not ever played at a super high level, but maybe has played a little bit, maybe high school ball or something, and has studied the sport, can understand the sport better than former NBA players. And you know that because all these guys with their blogs right now, you hear them every time they open your mouth, you're just like, what?
Shea Gilgeous-Alexander thinks that Kobe Bryant is a better player than Michael Jordan.
Well, sure. There you go. I mean, who was it?
There you
Brandon
go.
Miller said his GOAT was Paul George. He thinks Paul George is the greatest of all time.
Right? So there you go. No, the two things are not like there's a correlation, of course. If you've played basketball, I believe that it is a significant advantage towards understanding basketball and talking about
Yeah,
basketball. So
certainly.
too is a stats degree. So too is going to MIT. So too is being generally educated. So too is watching basketball. So too is coaching basketball. So too is studying basketball. So too is maybe studying other sports and just having a good understanding of sports. There's
Sure.
certainly people who talk about basketball like Kendrick Perkins who are off their fucking rocker with 85% of their takes. They're just I think they're comedians. I don't know if they're analysts, but you know, it does it is hard to convince people of anything. I said on the panel 4 months ago, I want to say 3 months ago, that I thought Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was having an all-time season, that I would put his season up there with 2017 Steph. And people laughed me right out of the room. They did not think that I was being serious. They're like, Steph Curry. But to say the same thing 4 months later, and people are like, yeah, I don't like it any more than I did back then, but now it makes sense. And it's like, but it made sense back then too. It's just early. So that's kind of where we're at. Scottie has the physics of Scottie Barnes are just you can't stop him. You see how much separation he gets on those turnarounds. That turnaround against Marcus Smart. Take the same move and put Pascal Siakam in that situation. And Pascal Siakam, we can all agree, more polished offensive player than Scottie Barnes, a lot smoother, a lot more aesthetically pleasing to most people than Scottie Barnes, a lot more advanced bag work, a lot further along in his offensive career. The same shot, I guarantee you Marcus Smart's getting a lot closer to that release. So much closer. It's just not as
Maybe
open.
Pascal sinks it. He might sink it, but he'd make it look a lot harder.
It
He'd
it
have
would
to
just
work a lot harder for it.
it would be so much harder because of the physics of how their bodies are constructed. Scotty's all legs. The legs create the separation. I remember I watched Vince Carter. I was very lucky because early in my life, I got in with the Toronto Raptors and I got to be around a lot of practices. And one of the things I used to watch Vince Carter work on with Milt Palacio was separation, specifically this specific move that he would do where he would jab step, take one step back, and fade away. And it was a move that I saw him perfect on the court over and over. And of course, a lot of people drove them crazy. Like, why don't you dunk? Why do you keep doing that? But people didn't understand how much space he got on that because of his explosiveness and how quickly he could do these things. He was getting like 9 to 10 feet of separation on two steps, and Milt Palacio could never come close. It was just like a little kid waving at his big brother, type of situation. But bigger defenders couldn't do anything about it either. It was just so unstoppable. And that was just when you realize, just observing that as a 15, 16-year-old, you're watching it and you're like, this is the physics of basketball. This is why Vince Carter is unstoppable, right? You have more respect for someone like Kobe Bryant, for whom the physics are not such an advantage. Like, it's an advantage. Kobe's athletic. He's not a super athlete like Michael and Vince. But when you take a super athlete and you add in bag work and work ethic, you get superstar, like, every time. And I can't think of an exception to that. And while people may not see Scotty as a super athlete, I think he's a super athlete. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. We've talked about it before. What makes somebody athletic is a lot more than how high they jump. So,
He has a 40-inch vert.
and also he has that too. Yeah, yeah.
40-inch
It,
vert, like hands bigger than, most people's, I don't know, kneecaps. I don't know, that's not the right thing. Hands bigger than most people's feet, I would say. His hands are huge, man, like just freaking huge. Like, I
like dinner
remember
plates.
I remember seeing Scottie Barnes once up close, and you're like, this guy does not feel like a real human being. You know what I mean? Like, everything about him is just exaggerated. His arms are down to his knees. His hips are like up to what feels like should be his chest, and his hands are like Kawhi hands. And it's just when you combine those rare physical attributes, like with Giannis, Kawhi, Scotty, it's just like it's not it's not normal. Like, there's nothing normal about this. There's nothing. You just can't stop this. And these are huge. positive indicators of basketball success. Big hands are helpful for basketball, it's hugely successful for manipulating and controlling the basketball. Long arms are exceptionally, important for basketball. Long legs are, long strides are important for basketball. There's a reason why there's 2 other players in NBA history other than Scottie Barnes who ever cleared the court in 3 dribbles. Shaq, Giannis, Scottie. That's it. So it is really nuts. Yeah. Yeah.
Here's a question for you, sort of switching gears a little bit. Do you think that it is easier right now at this point in the season to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder or to lose to the Washington Wizards? Which is harder?
Which is harder right now?
Yeah.
I think it's harder to beat the OKC Thunder, as evidenced by last night's game against the Clippers. Did you watch it?
No, I didn't.
Okay, let me paint the picture for you. No Chet. Okay. No Chet. No Jalen Williams. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander was very rushed all night. Did not shoot the basketball well. I believe he shot close to 30% from the field. And somehow the Thunder still won against the Clippers, who had Kawhi, PG, Norman Powell, Ivica Zubac, and everybody. They were healthy and they were at home. The Thunder went in and beat them. I don't know how to beat this team. I don't know what else to say about this team. This team is so good, it's unfair. Isaiah Hartenstein being arguably your 6th best player is the craziest thought I've ever had. They are the deepest team in the league. Here's a fun fact. Chet Holmgren is their 3rd option. I would take their 3rd option over half the team's first options.
For sure.
Think about the
but
first
you gotta
options
admit,
around
though,
the league. And think about it. Chet Holmgren, when healthy, is he a top 15 player? Top 20 player? He is.
I absolutely. I mean, he's a guy that I would build a team around.
100%.
I would.
Most people would. I think if you were to do a league-wide draft, I think most general managers would pick him top 12. He's the 3rd option.
Certainly.
He's on a rookie contract. Like, this is nuts. The embarrassment of riches. And yet I still remain very much hopeful that the Philadelphia 76ers lose their 6th overall pick and convey it as 7th to OKC. And I hope we jump them. And I hope that we are the team to knock them out of the 6th. I hope that we are the team that knocks them out of that position and then gets there. Because I really don't care at this point about the OKC Thunder. It's like, okay, just the rich get richer, pack it on. I have pretty much relegated myself to the fact that nobody else is winning a championship for the next 8 years anyway, unless they get very lucky anyway. So, yeah.
Well, you can also look at it as good for the league, right? Because the more riches they have, the more they'll be forced to make tough decisions and have to move some of these guys. And they have such a great developmental system that these guys will actually turn into something good. It's good for the whole league to have OKC get that pick. It wouldn't be good for the league for Philly to get it. It wouldn't be good for anybody.
I agree with that. Yeah. Overall, I have okay. Have you been watching March Madness at all? I'm curious.
No, I'm way too busy. Slammed.
Yeah.
Slammed
it is
with
great
work.
basketball. We are now in the Sweet 16. Cooper Flag, Kaman Malawach are in the Sweet 16. That's good. There's some really good prospects that have been knocked out already. But yes, it is interesting time for Raptor fans, I think, who want to get an early look at all these players. I can honestly tell you, apart from 3 games, I've watched every single game of March Madness so far on the men's side.
Man.
And on the women's side, I've watched about half.
I've been following just, reading a little bit or listening to a little bit here and there, but I wish I had the time to watch more.
It's beautiful. It's so fun. And, the stakes are so high. It's a single game elimination and these kids are playing super hard. And as much as NIL has taken over, college basketball, it still doesn't feel overly tainted by money. So yeah, I hate to sound like one of those people who's like, it's pure basketball, but it feels a little purer than the NBA game, especially with all this tanking bullshit going on. If I did not have an obligation to Pensare Basketball, I would not be watching Raptor games right now. I'm gonna be honest. I would not be watching Raptor games. I'm not even, y'all know me. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna be like, no guys, we must watch Raptor games, because I know that it's good for our community to watch basketball games so that you'll tune into the post game. I'm not one of those people who's like, we need to watch Raptor games. No. If you had to choose between watching, Duke play and Toronto play in 2 days, I choose Duke. I think you should choose Duke too. But yeah.
I know that you mentioned that VJ Edgecombe, that you're kind of dropping a little bit on him. Has watching March Madness changed your opinion of any other of the top prospects?
Yeah. So Kasparis, Yakuchonis had a really, really tough out with Illinois. I thought he was very unassertive, very indecisive, and looked like a mess as a lead ball handler. I thought he really struggled. And a lot of people see him as a top 10 pick. Earlier in the cycle, he was a top 5 pick. I feel like he could drop to 13 to 15 now. I think one player who's probably going to rise up very quickly, and that is Derek Queen. You know, I
Yeah,
have a
that
lot of
buzzer beater is going to help.
concerns. Yeah, I think it's not just the buzzer beater though, because I was talking to my friend who's a scout, and he was talking about the advanced analytics on Derek Queen. And he says, he's actually a really positive defender. People just don't give him credit. Like, check the spectrum data on Derek Queen's defense. And so I started to look at it, and it's just like shit. His team is so much better with him defensively on the court. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, there's a correlation between offense and defense. He's a huge, huge part of stable offense for his team. And so, naturally, if you limit turnovers and get buckets, you're not defending in transition as much. So that's usually a positive. But still, there are traits that you see in spurts with him defensively. And you're like, maybe with a few less minutes, because he does play around 35 minutes a game, maybe with a few less minutes, an NBA conditioning program. Does he have the skills to maybe be like an average defender to an above average defender? He's never going to be a huge, big time shot blocker, but could he be a little bit more switchable than I'm giving him credit for? He's got kind of fluid hips. He's got really good movement patterns. He's kind of like light on his feet. He has, a huge block to kind of save the game on the other end. So, maybe he's not going to be as big a negative on defense as I thought, but offensively, like, I am blown away by him. Motor questions are there, but I'm reminded last year I had motor questions about Kalal Ware, and he's proving it wrong. He's proving me wrong big time this year. So I'm trying to learn, from past mistakes, not repeating the same mistakes over and over. I really honed in on Liam McNeely as the resident white guy that I'm going to overlook every draft cycle.
Yeah.
Like Grady Dick. It's like this year's Grady Dick. I call it my Grady Dick award. So every single time there's like a white shooter who plays for like, one of the better teams, I'm just like, that's probably the guy that I'm going to overlook. I also found myself very impressed with Con Knipple, another white guy, another
Yeah,
Grady,
another one that fits your mold. Yeah.
another Grady. He's so different than Grady. He's like, he's got a really low center of gravity. He's really shifty, and he's really crafty with the basketball. Like he feels less of a scorer and more of a he feels less of a shooter and more of a scorer who can shoot. So I was impressed with him as well. I don't know, with all these guys, you never know like how it's going to translate to the next level. Maybe he's a star at that level, and then he comes up to this level, he's not a star. But yeah, I think this draft is very, very deep. And, while I would love to pick second, third, I'm inclined to say I think at 7 or 8, we're still going to get a really good player. Yeah.
That's how I feel too. I obviously haven't looked into it as deeply, but I trust the people that have, and it seems to be, I don't know. I'm excited about several. Yeah. Obviously,
It's
come on,
sort of
Malawach
weird.
is.
Yeah, it's sort of weird because, I okay, so on the women's side, I'm rooting for all my favorite prospects, right? So today, Tania, I was rooting for her. I was rooting for Paige Beckers. I was rooting for Flage. I was rooting for all my favorite players. I'm rooting for Juju. But on the men's side, I'm kind of rooting against all my favorite prospects. I kind of want them to do poorly so their draft stock falls down so that they fall to the Raptors.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so
That makes sense.
backwards. Everything is backwards right now. I can't wait for the draft lottery. I can't wait for March Madness to be over and for the draft
Mhm.
lottery so that I know where the Raptors are picking. And then, and even then, I'm going to probably be rooting for my favorite prospects to have like really terrible shit come out. Who knows, man? I might start some rumors about Cooper Flag, being a meth head or something like that, and just, risk getting sued by his entire
Eclipse.
camp. You use the power of AI, to just have Cooper confess on camera that he's into meth and he's deeply into this shit. And, like maybe it'll scare some teams off, throw in some misinformation out there, invent some sort of weird teacher story about how Cooper threw a tantrum in class. And, when the teacher tried to confiscate his meth, right? Like, I don't know. Like,
He's been groomed by his babysitter, you know.
Oh, that would really help. You need some shit that'll actually stick, in terms of those white allegations, right? So
Those white people problems, yeah.
yeah, you need some of those, right? So he's got an uncle who's just very too involved, and give some Uncle Dennis vibes, his handlers and shit like that. He's a prima donna. He has temper tantrums, you know. I don't know, maybe get a shoplifting allegation in there, throw in some, LiAngelo Ball shit in there. I don't know. Maybe put some questions out about whether he wants to even play basketball long term, or maybe he wants to be a priest. I don't know. We'll just cycle it around. We'll see which one sticks. Maybe he
Yep.
falls down to 3. We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can tell you, I think Kaman has not played well enough right now to throw himself into top 5. So I'm kind of hoping it stays that way. But I'm telling you right now, if we go to the Final Four and Kaman Malawach has like a 7 or 8 block game or some shit like that, and he saves the season while Cooper struggles, it's gonna vault him right into top 5. So many people watch March Madness, and there is this weird thing where it's not just a game. It is just a game. Of course, it's just a game, which is why I kind of prefer my favorite prospects to struggle, because I really don't care that they struggle. I don't care that they struggle that much. But when they succeed in those moments, when they do super well in those moments, oh my God, what it does for their draft stock. Because some people are watching, and then there's all these old school scouts that are like, he has the dog, he has the clutch gene. And it's like, oh, fuck me. It's a game. He went 5 for 5, he went 0 for 5. It's just a game. But I get it. And, yeah, it feels like Duke is very deep, so it doesn't feel like Kaman is really playing enough minutes to really showcase his shit. And he's not
That's how
exactly
I
tasked
think. Yeah.
with like huge usage. He's more like a play finisher. And
Yep.
the more of this, like he's the next Hashim to beat stuff I can put online, that might be the
Yeah.
best way to go. Just kind of put a cross reference between the two, compare them. For all the racists out there who compare all African prospects to African prospects anyway, just be like, look, come on, take a look, same guy. Maybe put some concerns about his age out there, because that's always a concern with African
Oh,
prospects.
that.
Lord knows,
Yeah.
super racist, but it is what it is. Kaman Malawach is really a 38-year-old, retired police officer. Some Thon Maker allegations out there. Boom, just sprinkle that all out there, and maybe he'll fall to 8 for the Raptors.
Well, I've seen him mocked most of the time in the teens, and I don't think he'll last. I don't think he'll make it past 10. I don't think there's any chance he'll make it past 10.
I think one player that's going to rise up draft boards. I've seen a lot of mock drafts putting Jaeger Demon like in the 20s. I think he's going to be a lot higher than people think. I think people are going to vault him up to like early lottery. He's a 6'9" real playmaker.
Yeah.
Athleticism
Yeah.
is not that big a concern with him. I think he's a little bit burstier than people give him credit for. I think, yeah, like he's in the Sweet 16. He's a player who could easily vault himself back into top 5 conversations. And me personally, I'm for all the players that I'm not super high on getting top 5 consideration. With VJ Edgecombe, like I think his analytics are so off the charts for a guard who plays at Baylor, because I know typically guards who play at Baylor struggle in their first year. So it's like it's hard to not look at those analytics and be like, oh my God, like look at the impact. But then you see how he scores, and you're just like, I don't see the creation. I'm not seeing, the shot making talent. I'm seeing more of a standstill shooter. I'm trying to see like an all defensive type of guy, but he feels a little small to me. He's a great athlete, but is he an Asar Thompson like athlete? So if he goes top 5, I think that would be a really big win for the Raptors, to be honest. But if he falls down to 8, I'll consider him 100%. I don't know. Yeah. Is there a player? Okay. So here's a question for you. If you could trade 3 players this offseason off the Raptors, who would they be?
It depends what I'm looking for in a return.
Okay, so I personally am looking for a 3-for-1. I want to trade 3 players for 1 player because I am deeply, gravely concerned about the expansion draft. So, yes.
All right. Here's what I would think. I would be willing to move off IQ if a guard is coming back, if a lead guard is coming back. So somebody like Devin Booker or something. And
You're adding a whole bunch to that, right? To make up the
of
gap
course,
in their values. Okay.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I would say IQ, Ochai, even though I love Ochai, but you got to give value. And I think that maximize his value before he gets his big payday. Maximize his trade value because he's going to get it. He's going to get a pay raise. And also I think we're heavy in the wings. He's good, but I'd be willing
Mhm.
to. And Yak,
Okay. So
draft
you
a big,
trade
draft a
in
big.
in theory, you trade two of your absolute best shooters and your only non-shooter. That's interesting. So
Well, again,
Ochai,
if it's a 3-for-1, then you're going to be replacing that with presumably somebody who can shoot pretty well,
ideally.
and then maybe move somebody like Grady into the starting lineup or whoever you draft. That's
Would it be crazy to say I would be most open to moving Grady,
I thought about
Yak,
that too.
and
I've been back and
RJ?
forth on that.
Yeah. I feel like Emmanuel Quickley's value is really low right now. Here's how low it is. I would prefer Malik Monk over Emmanuel Quickley, and Malik Monk makes 4 years, 78 million. So it's basically half the
Yeah,
contract. It's
that's true.
bad. It's really bad. So, and Malik is mildly overperforming that contract, but Malik's like just, I don't know how Malik signed that contract. I felt he was worth so much more based on what he did last year and the fact that he's been so successful with the Kings. And, he's really turned around his career. He had a really rough start in Charlotte. I think that's the thing. Emmanuel Quickley didn't have a rough start. He had a really strong start in New York and he kept it up. And last year's numbers were so insane with the Raptors that I feel like they just kind of banked on an upside. I feel like we overpaid for no reason. I would have been much more comfortable with 4 years, 100 million. Even that feels a little rich. 25 million a year felt rich for him in a league where Gary Trent and Tyus Jones are getting minimums. Like for you to put
Mm-hmm.
32 million a year on 5-year commitment to Maine quickly feels crazy. Now, if he becomes the player that we hypothesize he can be, then for sure he can be close to worth that. I just don't think he's played like that this year. The losing kind of puts a taint on his value as well. One of the more underrated parts of the Raptors staggering their injuries, sort of like playing IQ, then playing RJ, then playing IQ, then playing RJ, is they don't actually get in the way of each other's minutes,
Mm-hmm.
which is good because they also don't get in the way of each other's stats. So at the end of the year, you'll have these two guys and they'll have these great numbers and they will have none of the actual perceived depreciation of players who miss games because they never had any injuries. I mean, Emmanuel quickly had injuries early, don't get me wrong. And RJ Barrett had that injury with his shoulder with the Yakapertle thing. But it's not like if they play 50 games, that suddenly everyone's like, oh my God, there's a big injury concern. It's like, no, we were tanking. We rested them. It's clear we've written rest, rest, illness, rest, illness, rest for these players. But yet, because they continue to have primacy in the offense, and Scottie is more than willing to let them take 20, 22 shots a game, their numbers, if they finally start hitting shots, could actually be really impressive. And if you go into the offseason, you're looking at trading a 22 point per game scorer, which perceptively has more value than an 18 point per game scorer, Same thing with the
Yeah.
assists, like those assist numbers for RJ. Like you could really sell yourself on the idea that RJ Barrett is like a really good starter in the NBA. Like I put his numbers up next to Jaylen Brown the other day and he clears them on
Mm.
almost every category offensively.
Yeah.
And Jaylen
I
Brown's a
love.
MVP.
Yeah. Well, no, I guess one of the reasons why I would hold on to RJ over
Mhm.
IQ is I feel RJ is a little more versatile in his position. He can play wing. He can play 1 through 3. And I have seen him play 4 in a pinch, but so
Can he
IQ is
guard
pretty
one?
much.
So
But that's the thing. Yeah, the guarding, I know. But IQ also can't guard anybody this year. Um, and I just feel like if we don't move IQ in a deal to bring somebody back, then he's going to be awfully redundant if we were bringing a guard back. You can't play him off the bench. There's no room for him in the starting lineup. Then really, him if we have you know, I don't know. I feel like he's more. There's a higher risk of having him being a massive bloated redundancy on your team than RJ. That's just, I don't know.
I think RJ's next contract, based on his numbers, could get very expensive for Toronto.
That's true though. It could.
And that could be a problem because you don't have a lot of money. And so I asked myself, who fits better with Scottie and BI? IQ, a movement shooter who plays off the ball and can occasionally guard ones and
Oh,
twos, or
on
RJ
paper,
Barrett.
IQ. On paper, it's IQ.
But then you think about the synergy between Scottie and RJ being the younger player, the bigger player,
Mhm.
the arguably better playmaker this
I
year.
know that's the thing. The playmaker. Yeah, that's it. I, strangely enough, if I closed my eyes and just had to pick based on the numbers who I would want as my table setter, I'd pick RJ.
Hmm. But then his lack of high volume 3-point shooting creates spacing issues
right.
when he's the lead initiator. I know he's shooting about 35.5% from three, but teams still guard him like he's Ben Simmons.
That's
So
right.
I don't know. Like when he has the basketball, he's pretty much a straight line driver with a left hand
Mhm.
finish. I would love to see if that could expand a little bit more. If he could become a little bit more dynamic with the
Mhm.
basketball than the playmaking, and he can become like 10% better defensively, I could see it. If he settled into a 6-man role, that would be great. But I know most
Right.
fans don't want to hear that. It was
Mhm.
interesting hearing William Liu and those people discussing that, a few days ago. Keeks and Will Liu and all those people, they were saying like, hey, like, would we potentially, how do you go to RJ Barrett and say, hey, I know you're leading scorer on the team, but we want you to come off the bench? I don't know. I think if I could build this team from scratch, BI and Scottie, and I'm just going straight off of, league wide draft, sort of thing. There are very few players on this team that I would add to that team that are
Mhm.
currently on this team. I would certainly be looking at players like Nas Reed. I would certainly look at players like Malik Monk, although he is a defensive liability. I would certainly look at players like Drew Holiday, Derek White, just defensively as point of attack defenders. I would certainly look at players like Cason Wallace, which it grinds my gears so much that we missed out on him by 2 picks in that draft, in which we should have never been in the play-in. I'll continue to,
Yeah,
in my head
I get
vent
that.
about that. That is one of the big mistakes by Masai Ujiri. Uh, I would definitely look at players like Derek White. Derek Favors. Not Derek Favors. What am I talking about?
Derek Lively.
Derek Lively. Derek Lively. Wow, I just went Derek White, Derek Favors, Derek Lively. Okay, a lot of Derek's in the NBA. Derek
Derek
Lively,
Queen next.
Derek Queen potentially, yeah. Uh, yeah, and in terms of that movement shooter archetype, I was always high. If you recall, in all those trade shows, how many times did I trade for Kevin Herter? I must
Yeah,
have traded him for him like once a week for like a
yeah.
year because I just felt like, he had something. And now in Chicago, he looks great. He's been great
Mhm.
for the Bulls lately.
Oh, I know.
So,
Yeah, he's turned it around.
like as a deep bench guy making 16, $17 million a year, I really don't mind Kevin Herter. I think he's been pretty solid. Yeah. Franz Wagner would be just amazing. Would
Oh,
be
that would.
awesome. But, shooting complications aside, Kobe White, players like that,
Yep.
just
Kobe
dynamic.
White's been amazing this year.
Back-to-back Eastern Conference Player of the Week, Kobe White.
Yeah.
Just and by the way, just beat the Denver Nuggets. Kobe White and Josh Giddey.
Yep.
So the
Yep.
Bulls are rolling. I know their fans are not happy about it, but they should shut the fuck up because they're playing a whole bunch of young players and they're actually winning. And you know what? Who knows? They'll probably beat the Miami Heat in the opening round of the play-in tournament, and then who knows where they go from there? Who knows? We will see. But Miami is facing off against Golden State tomorrow, so you can 100% pencil that in as a loss. Jimmy Butler is not
Yep.
losing to the Miami Heat, so yeah, it'll be tough. That'll pretty much be the battle for the rest of the year. Can we hold off Miami? It would
Yep.
be amazing if after all of this tanking, we end up in the play-in. That would just be.
Oh yeah.
It would be so amazing because right away you'd hear like a report. Magic, has happened. Brandon Ingram is perfectly healthy to play, and he will be playing tomorrow.
Suddenly, yeah. Yeah. I know.
I think we would, weirdly enough,
Wild.
probably tank the play.
You know that yeah,
I mean, all it would
that's right.
do is move us because of how much the Western Conference teams are progressing. Unless Dallas completely tears it down right now, all it would do is move us from 7 to 8
Mhm.
or 8 to 9. I think it's
Yeah.
7 to 8, 7 to 8 because we're not catching Chicago. So I think it would just be 7 to 8. And hey, we get a really big playoff type game for Orlando Robinson and Colin Castleton to work their magic.
Great. Yeah.
Look at Orlando Robinson playing, point
Oh,
center today. That was
I
pretty
know.
interesting. We were so desperate to tank down the stretch that we didn't even have a point guard on the floor, and then we ran the offense through Orlando Robinson, and somehow the Wizards still couldn't win. So
Yeah. That's why I asked the question about OKC and Washington. Like, yeah, I know it's tough to beat OKC, but it's really hard to lose to Washington too.
yeah, but we haven't beat OKC this year, have we?
No,
But we have lost to Washington.
we have. Yeah. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, no, you're right.
It was we can thank Marcus Smart, and we can thank Chris Middleton, because the games that they haven't played very much, we haven't been very competitive. But shout outs to Chris Middleton. He was +8 today.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Middleton is the difference. I will die. I will die on this hill. Chris Middleton is still a better player than Kyle Kuzma. I don't care what the Bucks say. Defensive liability be damned. I
You're right.
cannot get on board with. I don't want to live on a planet where Kyle Kuzma is a better player than Chris Middleton. I can't stomach that. Also, there's a really interesting thing that someone brought to my attention today, and I would bring it to your attention because I think this might keep you up at night. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Shoot.
The New York Knicks acquired two major wings over the last year, OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. Do you know where I'm going with this? I think you might. Okay, so they paid 5 first-round picks and a pick swap for Mikal Bridges, and they paid RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, plus a second-round pick for OG Anunoby.
Yeah.
Most people in New York are completely of the consensus that OG Anunoby is the better player.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Let's think about that for a second. So here's the question that I would ask you. How many picks of that Mikal Bridges package would it take for you to move Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett right now? And Jonathan Mobo. You got to include the whole package. So
right.
it would,
Well, yeah. Okay. How many picks? I mean, are any of them high? I can't remember.
Believe it or not, their pick this year is actually acquired from that trade. That pick, if I'm not mistaken, allowed them to tank this year. That pick might be Cooper Flag.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Crazy.
It's also worth noting that if the Raptors owned the Nets pick, that the Nets wouldn't have torn it down the way they did.
True.
So that pick would be a little bit better, but at worst, it would be like a late lottery pick or an early mid first round pick.
Mm-hmm.
But it's 5 picks. So I guess that's what I'm asking. Like in a
Yeah, I
vacuum,
guess.
5 first round picks and a pick swap. How much of that package is RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly worth to you?
I mean, obviously not all 5.
Do you think you can get 2?
Maybe 3? 2? 3? Probably 3. Well, no. Probably 2. Yeah.
I'm inclined to say you might be lucky at this point to get 2 picks for
Yeah.
RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly.
3 if it doesn't include that Brooklyn pick, then yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 low firsts, yeah.
I feel like Masai Ujiri we need to put into his next contract. You're not allowed to trade first round picks.
Yeah.
Stepien rule, be damned. We have a Masai rule. You don't get to trade first round picks anymore, because trading a first round pick for Brandon Ingram, I can get on board with. Trading a first round pick for Ochai Agbaji, I can get on board with, because I knew it was going to be a late first round pick in a weak draft where, still we think about the players who were available around that pick, and you're just like, still, Ochai is going to be up for extension very soon. Should we have just taken that pick and turned it into Kyle Filipowski? Is Kyle Filipowski right now worth more than Ochai Agbaji? Probably yes, actually. He probably is. Is Isaiah Collier worth more than Ochai Agbaji on the open market right now? He's probably close. Is Ryan Dunn worth more than Ochai Agbaji right now?
I would
Probably
say
yes.
definitely.
So yeah, so like, if you're so good at drafting, draft. You know what I mean?
Draft.
Like, fuck,
Fair point.
what the hell's wrong with you? Just draft. And it's not like Ochai Abaji, who was learning how to shoot jump shots with Darko Rajakovic, is that much far removed from a 4-year senior anyway. Right now, I've been very impressed with Ochai this year. He's really been great, but trading a first round pick for him still feels a little bit like, why? Why did we do that? Now, getting some of those picks back for Jalen McDaniels was a great bonus, but trading a first round pick for Thaddeus Young sucks. Trading a first round pick that conveyed into a pick that could have turned into Matas Buzelis for Jakob Poeltl.
For
Do you know how
Yak,
much,
yeah.
do you know how many picks we would have to add to Jakob Poeltl right now to just get Matas Buzelis straight up?
Exactly.
Do you know how many picks we would have to add to Yak to get Jared McCain? How many picks would we have to add to Yak to get friggin' Kalel Ware right now? What about Zach Edey? You know what I mean? Like these contracts are valuable. Like with a guy like Zach Edey or Donovan Clingan or guys like this, guys who are relatively NBA ready. Like I understand the value of Yak, but like we got to stop trading first round picks, man. Like I understood trading first round picks when we were in title contention windows, and we traded a first for Kawhi, and we traded a first for Marc Gasol. I got that. I'll never complain about that. I understood trading a first round pick for Kyle Lowry because it was just such an obvious player that was so undervalued and he was so good. But Thaddeus Young, Jakob Poeltl, Ochai Abaji, no, cannot trade first round picks for these types of players. We need to reassess how internally we value first round picks, because I feel like they need to be worth a hell of a lot more to us.
Oh, for sure. I think, and I mean, besides just the player, just the contract, the years of the rookie contract are so valuable, because when you're trading first round picks for $20 million middle sort of players, that bloats your roster really quick. And how much better is a Jakob Poeltl or an Ochai or a Thaddeus Young on a $15 million contract or $20 million contract? How much better is that than the player you would have picked with the first round pick after, say, 2 years?
Well, think about the players who were available. Think about this. These are the players that were available for that first round pick that we traded to San Antonio for Thaddeus Young. Are you ready for this?
All right, yeah.
Christian Brown.
Yeah.
Currently starting.
Oh, man, I love Christian Brown.
Peyton Watson.
Oh, love him
Nikola
too.
Jovic. Andrew Nembhard. Walker Kessler. That's 5.
Know, right?
That's 5 rotation players that we would easily trade multiple firsts to get right now. Andrew
and
Nembhard, that multiple firsts right now.
And that the Raptors would have picked one of those guys if they had that pick. They would have for sure.
And I don't think it would have been Walker Kessler. I shudder to think it could have been David Roddy, and we would have we would have messed that up. But it probably, like, based on how the Raptors think about this, I feel like they would have reached for Peyton Watson, or they might have reached for Andrew Nembhard because they value that archetype. But Nembhard has been so good. And again, comparables: Nembhard's contract, IQ's contract. Holy shit, what a difference! And I don't think there's a class difference between these two players at all.
I agree.
If I'm ranking out the league, in fact, Nembhard's defense actually puts him above Emmanuel.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. So, the Raptors really need to think about how expensive their roster is getting and how to offset it with first round picks. Now, we've obviously traded a potentially high first round pick. We will see what that Indiana pick turns into if Miles Turner leaves, but that has the potential to backfire. As much as I love Brandon Ingram, and I'm not gonna, sit here and say that I wouldn't do that trade because that pick was, involved. That is a team with a muddy future. If Pascal Siakam or Tyrese Haliburton get injured, and so we'll see what that turns into. I'm still inclined to say it's probably going to be a mid first round pick and a pretty strong draft. But when we see what that player turns into, and I'm pretty sure it's going to turn into Dash Daniels, and I'm just going to lose my mind. But Dyson Daniels' brother, he's really good. I think he's better than Dyson. That's a funny fact. Like, at the same age, he's better than Dyson by far. Yeah, he's mocked around the middle of the 2026 draft. We'll see. We'll see. But yes, I mean, again, it's a scary thought. Like, for me, as someone who's turning into a bit of a draft junkie, like, to see these players and to see the type of value that you could have, and then to see this incredible development staff that we have and what we're doing with Jamison Battle and what we're doing with Jamal Shed. My only thought is, get me a blue chipper. Like, get me one of those guys. There's just like, it's like having the best mechanic in the world and only fixing Pintos. You know why?
Yeah,
You know, like,
that's
yeah,
it.
you can soup up a Pinto, but like, shoot, bro, the Porsche is right there. You know, so I hope we get Cooper Flag. I'm gonna cross my fingers. I pray for it at least 2 times a day. I went to church last week. I actually prayed for it. That's the weirdest shit in the world. But I'm just like, God, I know you got
Don't
bigger
think God works that way, but
God,
sure.
I know you got bigger problems, but we could really use some defense right now. It's been sad times in Toronto. But yeah.
Uh-huh.
Anyways, Daryl, any final thoughts?
Nah, man. Can't wait till the draft. Can't wait till the off season so that things can make sense again, and I can start cheering for what actually I want to cheer for instead of the opposite.
Yeah, thanks for calling in. This was a really good conversation, and I like having conversations over monologues. I vastly prefer it. So to anyone listening out there, please call in if you have good, insightful shit to say. Not everyone can be a rock star like Daryl, and not everyone's going to be a rock star like Coach Mo and Vince and some of, like, I would say, like the more fluid callers. But even if it's like 2, 3 questions, sometimes it's just good to break pace, and it's good to have a conversation, man. Thanks
And
for
as I
calling in.
always say, if there is a some sort of little bit of confrontation with you and a caller, that's also not the worst thing in the world for the listener. I mean,
So sometimes that can be
you
funny.
want to call in and push back? Do it, guys. Do it.
Sometimes it can be funny. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to lose my edge that much this year, and I think I've been pretty good for the most part. But yeah, like once in a while, we got to let the cat out of the bag, Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Peace. Have a good one.
Yeah. Have a good night.
See ya. Alrighty, y'all. Good conversation. Big thanks to Daryl for calling in. And oh no, JT got injured. Is it bad? And Boston still won. And Phoenix won as well. Phoenix is rolling, bro. Shoot. Damn, 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 damn. Jason Tatum gets injured. Juju Watkins gets injured. This is not a good day for injuries, man. Also, I think it's worth noting that Anthony Davis came back, played 27 minutes, 12 points, 6 rebounds. Immediately felt his impact on this game. The Dallas Mavericks got up big, never looked back. It feels like the Brooklyn Nets are just, they're never going to win another game again, man. Those games against Brooklyn are going to be so tough to watch. If you think this Washington team was bad, wow. We are going to get some Brooklyn minutes, bro. Cameron Johnson still playing, probably trying to boost his trade value. I do want to say, now here's the cool thing. Day'Ron Sharpe, former Scottie teammate. Trendon Watford, sneaky one of the better defenders in the league, but no one's talking about it. Nick Claxton plus Cameron Johnson. Yes, I do believe. Yes, I do believe if the Raptors play their cards right and they play all their guys, that yes, the Raptors can lose to the Brooklyn Nets. But I'll say this as a final sort of parting note for this live. The Raptors are playing a lot of guys minutes who don't have contracts for next year. This seems to be the crux of Masai Ujiri's entire tenure in Toronto, that he does not seem to understand human motivation as it pertains to money. Let me make this clear. Players who are playing for a contract tend to overperform. Okay. You can, of course, it's demoralizing as shit to tank and to be losing and to be out of the playoffs. And, naturally, a lot of players soften up their intensity. And, maybe players like Scottie Barnes and Emmanuel Quickly, who have contract sureness throughout the next 4 years, are not really sweating. But AJ Lawson, Orlando Robinson, these guys don't have contracts next year. Ochai Agbaji is playing for a contract next year. Jamal Shed is playing to keep his NBA career going. You have too much on the line for these players. Do you understand that when you put up an Alex Sarr and a Bub Carrington, two players who were lottery picks last year, who have guaranteed first round money for the next 4 years, regardless of what they do, when you put Jordan Poole out there, a player who is going to be, paid handsomely for the next few years, these players don't have any dog right now. They're in the dog days. Like maybe you can get them in a winning situation and they'll care about basketball again. But right now they're in a losing situation. They're playing pickup basketball. Meanwhile, your AJ Lawson and Orlando Robinson minutes are clearly like desperation minutes. Your Jameson Battle minutes are desperation minutes. You have too many guys who are desperate and too good. Okay. Now, all the desperation in the world isn't going to matter when you go up against a talented team, a super talented team. Unfortunately for the Raptors, they have one winning team remaining on their entire schedule, and that's Detroit. And by the way, I think we can beat Detroit. So this could get really ugly if the Raptors continue to play Colin Castleton and Orlando Robinson and AJ Lawson and Jared Roden. If they continue to play these guys minutes, they're going to continue opening themselves up, because it's not like you're going to go out there and say, hey, Jameson Battle, I need you to miss 6 shots. You're not doing that. What you're doing is you're assuming that your paper talent being worse than their paper talent gives you a chance to out tank these teams. And what you're not realizing is that whether you're talking about the Charlotte Hornets, or whether you're talking about the Brooklyn Nets, or whether you are talking about tonight against a team, like Washington, their worst players are less desperate than your worst players. You ever watch the movie The Replacements with Keanu Reeves? It's a really good movie with Gene Hackman. It's basically that, man. You have a whole bunch of guys, they're super locked in, they're playing with each other, they're playing connected. You've been instilling good habits in them. You have a system that makes people look better than they really are. And you have really, really bad opponents who aren't playing that way. And you're playing super hard defensively, which means you're no longer losing games on the road. I'll guarantee you right now that there are minutes of this game in which RJ Barrett would have been less effective than an AJ Lawson. But you don't see that. What you see in RJ is a star. What you see in Scottie is a star. What you see in Grady is a lottery pick. There's a combination of those players that can lose these games. What you're not going to do is you're not going to play Scottie, Jakob, and Emmanuel quickly with a whole bunch of role players and expect to lose these games because you're too good. You had Scottie shoot 5 for 18 tonight and Emmanuel quickly shoot 5 for 18 or 5 for 16 each. 5 for 16 is terrible. Your two highest paid players or best players both shot terribly, and Jakob Poeltl filled in the slack, and your role players played defense, and Jameson Battle hit a whole bunch of shots, and boom, there goes the game, right? You're just gonna have to stop half-assing this. I mentioned earlier the Raptors are 17 and 16 over their last 33. That's too good. That's too good. Okay. Now, in the last few games of the season, when tanking, is clearer, like, oh, we need one more loss or we can afford 2 more wins, by all means, let Brandon Ingram go, play 2 games, play your guts out, whatever, when there's nothing on the line. But right now, there's a lot on the line, and the Raptors find themselves behind the 8 ball on the tank. And, we're clinging on to that 7th spot, man. We're really clinging on to it. We're going to do a couple of tankathon spins just for good measure, because we used to do this all the time when the Raptors were higher up, and then now the Raptors dropped a little bit. We don't do them anymore. But I just want to mention that the 2 teams directly behind Toronto, because Toronto is 7th, but they clear 8th by quite a bit right now. They are still 5.5 games ahead of Miami after winning tonight. If Miami loses tomorrow, that gap will once again be 5, which means the magic number that the Raptors can win is 5, and that they own the tiebreaker between themselves and Chicago. Now, it feels like Chicago, winners of 3 straight and winners of 8 of their last 10, they're completely going the other way. So we don't have to worry about Chicago anymore. We're not catching Chicago, most likely. Chicago would have to free fall. We would have to rise up quite a bit to catch Chicago. I think it's worth noting that if the Raptors were trying to win games, they'd be ahead of Chicago. They might be ahead of Orlando. I'm being honest. I think the Raptors would be around where Orlando is right now if they were actually trying to win games all year. But that is neither here nor there. The Raptors made their bed. Now we're sleeping in it. Okay. So the Raptors' really only concern is Miami. That's it. Miami. That's the concern. San Antonio has won 3 straight for some stupid reason. Portland is probably just way too far behind. So it's really just Miami. Need to out-tank this team. If you manage to out-tank this team, you're good. You're not catching Brooklyn. You're not catching Philly. You're not catching New Orleans. You're not catching Charlotte. You're not catching Utah. And you're not catching Washington. It's just not happening. Okay. These are not happening. They're not coming back. Because, again, when it comes to tanking, we always look at losses, not wins. And when you think about 56 losses, you're never going to get to 56 losses. You're never going to get to 56 losses. When you think of 49 losses, this team right here, Brooklyn, is going to end the season close to probably 56 or 57 losses. You're not getting 57 losses. So the best thing you can hope for at this point is just to stave off Miami. Now let's try to do this and let's see if within 6, I'm going to give myself 10 spins to get Cooper Flag. Okay. 1. Shit. 7. 2. Oops. -1. 3. Three times the charm, right? 3 is my lucky number. We got it. All right. Peace, guys. Like this video for Cooper Flag. Peace.